Really solid audience questions this week. At the end of the Friday show, to sort of wrap things up, other than, of course, the bonus show for our members, we'll take 3 questions from the audience, and this week they are very good. Not that they're usually good, actually, but they're particularly good this week. Melissa wrote in, and Melissa said, what's considered normal today that future generations will look back at and wonder, what the hell were we thinking? I am often, my mind often goes to chemotherapy, right? I mean, when we think about chemo and what it does to the entire body, when you're trying to actually typically target the chemo to a specific region, area, or organ of the body, I'm convinced that at some point in the future, I don't know how soon, Lewis, we're going to look back at chemo and say, wow, that was really bad. With the damage it does to the whole body in order to achieve a positive medical outcome is really bad.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the same could be said about many medical practices,
Yeah.
right? Perhaps one day in the future, at least I hope, open heart surgery would seem completely barbaric,
Right.
You know, and cutting someone's chest open, opening up their heart. I mean, that I hope we will get away from.
The other one that comes to mind is when I think about what will we in the future look back at 2016 and say, why on earth was society organized in that way? The idea that you have to have a job in order to have an employer share the cost or pay for the cost of health insurance, or that you have to have a job, in many cases a very arbitrary job, or a job that seemingly is not even particularly productive for society, to be able to just afford a place to live or to have food. And I know that this gets to the idea of basic income, which we've talked about. I don't believe the current arrangement makes sense, especially as technology is able to take care of many of the day-to-day human tasks. I am hopeful that at some point we will have a society where we will not have the requirement of working to have health care, that we will not be required to work in order to just have basic needs met. I am convinced eventually society is going to figure that out. Hopefully there will not be political obstacles put in the way.
Yes, that's a big one. That's a good one. And the reason I chose the picture behind us here, and if you're listening, it is of traffic. Transportation has got to be one of those things. When we look back and say every person had their own car, every car was powered by fossil fuels.
Right.
That to me is something that does not necessarily need to be the reality going forward.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. And that may not necessarily mean, there's still a lot to be said about people working in the same room. So I don't believe that telecommuting is going to be the answer for all jobs, specifically not for location-based jobs, and that makes sense. But the current status quo of what Lewis is pointing out, it's going to have to change at some point. And all we need to do is invent a teleporter, and then we'll be all set, which I think we're only like 6 months away from, supposedly.
6 months and 60 years, maybe. Actually, that's being really generous. But there is work being done in that field.
And then it gets to the philosophical question of, if you had a teleporter, would you really be transporting the item? Or would you be essentially destroying it and rebuilding it in the new location? Really, at this point, more of a theoretical, philosophical question, a popular one in college philosophy classes than a real concern.